Chapter 4. The important thing about adventures, thought Mr. Bunsey, was that they shouldn't be so long as to make you miss meal times. From Mr. Bunsey Has an Adventure. The kid and the girl and Maurice were in a large kitchen. The kid could tell it was a kitchen because of the huge black iron range in the chimney breast and the pans hanging on the walls and the long scarred table. What it didn't seem to have was what a kitchen traditionally had, which was food. The girl went to a metal box in the corner and fumbled around her neck for a string, which it turned out held a large key. "You can't trust anybody," she said, "and the rats steal 100 times what they eat, the devils." "I don't think they do," said the kid. 10 times at most." "You know all about rats all of a sudden?" said the girl, unlocking the metal case. "Not all of a sudden. I learned it when—" "Ow! That really hurt." "Sorry about that," said Maurice. I accidentally scratched you, did I?" He tried to make a face which said, "Don't be a complete twerp, okay?" which was quite hard to do with a cat's head. The girl gave him a suspicious look and then turned back to the metal box. "There's some milk that's not gone hard yet and a couple of fish heads," she said, peering inside. "Sounds good to me," said Maurice. "What about your human?" "Oh, him? He'll eat any old scraps." There's bread and sausage," said the girl, taking a can from the metal cupboard. "We're all very suspicious about the sausages. There's a tiny bit of cheese too, but it's rather ancestral." "I don't think we should eat your food if it's so short," said the kid. "We have got money." "Oh, my father says it'd reflect very badly on the town if we weren't hospitable. He's the mayor, you know." "He's the government," said the kid. The girl stared at him. "I suppose so," she said. "Funny way of putting it. The town council makes the laws, really. He just runs the place and argues with everyone. And he says we shouldn't have any more rations than other people, to show solidarity in these difficult times. It was bad enough that tourists stopped visiting our hot baths, but the rats have made it a lot worse." She took a couple of saucers from the big kitchen dresser. "My father says that if we're all sensible, there'll be enough to go round," she went on, "which I think is very commendable. I entirely agree, but I think that once you've shown solidarity, you're allowed to just have a little bit extra. In fact, I think we get a little bit less than everyone else. Can you imagine? Anyway, so you really are a magical cat then?" She finished pouring the milk into a saucer. It oozed rather than gushed, but Maurice was a street cat, and he would drink milk so rotten that it would try to crawl away. "Oh, yes, that's right, magical," he said, with a yellow-white ring around his mouth. For 2 fish heads, he'd be anything for anybody. "Probably belonged to a witch, I expect, with a name like Griselda or one of those names," said the girl, putting the fish heads on another saucer. "Yeah, right, Griselda, right," said Maurice, not raising his head. "Who, lived in a gingerbread cottage in the forest, probably." "Yeah, right," said Maurice. And then, because he wouldn't be Maurice if he couldn't be a bit inventive, he added, "Only, it was a crisp bread cottage, because she was slimming. Very healthy witch, Griselda." The girl looked puzzled for a moment. "That's not how it should go," she said. "Sorry, I tell a lie. It was gingerbread, really," said Maurice quickly. Someone giving you food was always correct. "And she had big warts, I'm sure." "Miss," said Maurice, trying to look sincere, "some of those warts had so much personality that they used to have friends of their own. What's your name, miss?" "Promise not to laugh?" "All right. After all, there might be more fish heads." It's Militia." "Oh. Are you laughing?" she said in a threatening voice. "No," said Maurice, mystified. "Why should I?" "You don't think it's a funny name?" Maurice thought about the names he knew. Ham and pork, dangerous beans, dark tan, sardines. "Sounds like an ordinary kind of name to me," he said. Militia gave him another suspicious look, but turned her attention to the kid, who was sitting with the usual happy, faraway smile he wore when he didn't have anything else to do. "And have you got a name?" she said. "You're not the third and youngest son of a king, are you? If your name starts Prince, that's a definite clue." The kid said, I think it's Keith." "You never said you had a name," said Maurice. "No one's ever asked before," said the kid. Keith is not a promising name start," said Militia. "It doesn't hint of mystery, it just hints of Keith. Are you sure it's your real name?" "It's just the one they gave me." That's more like it. A slight hint of mystery," said Militia, suddenly looking interested. "Just enough to build up suspense. You're You were stolen away at birth, I expect. You probably are the rightful king of some country, but they found someone who looked like you and did a swap. In any case, you have a magic sword. Only it won't look magic, you see, until it's time for you to manifest your destiny. You were probably found on a doorstep. I was, yes, said Keith. See, I'm always right. Maurice was always on the lookout for what people wanted, and what Militia wanted, he felt, was a gag. But he'd never heard the stupid-looking kid talk about himself before. What were you doing on a doorstep? He said. I dunno, gurgling, I expect, said Keith. You never said, said Maurice accusingly. Is it important? Said Keith. There was a magic sword or a crown in the basket with you, probably, and you've got a mysterious tattoo or a strange-shaped birthmark, said Militia. I don't think so. No one's ever mentioned them, said Keith. There was just me and a blanket and a note. A note? But that's important! It said, 19 pints and a strawberry yoghurt, said Keith. Not helpful then, said Militia. Why 19 pints of milk? It was the Guild of Musicians, said Keith. Quite a large place. Don't know about the strawberry yoghurt. Abandoned orphan is good, said Militia. After all, a prince can only grow up to be a king, but a mysterious orphan could be anybody. Were you beaten and starved and locked in a cellar? I don't think so, said Keith, giving her a funny look. Everyone at the guild was very kind. They were mostly nice people. They taught me a lot. We've got guilds here, said Militia. They teach boys to be carpenters and stonemasons and things like that. The guild taught me music, said Keith. I'm a musician. I'm good at it too. I've been earning my own living since I was 6. Aha! Mysterious orphans, strange talent, distressed upbringing. It's all shaping up, said Militia. The strawberry yoghurt's probably not important. Would your life have been different if it had been banana-flavoured? Who can say? What kinds of music do you play? Kinds? There aren't any kinds. There's just music, said Keith. There's always music, if you listen. Militia looked at Maurice. Is he always like this? She demanded. This is the most I've ever heard him say, said the cat. I expect you're very keen to know all about me, said Militia. I expect you're just too polite to ask. Gosh, yes, said Maurice. Well, you probably won't be surprised to know that I've got 2 dreadful stepsisters, said Militia, and I have to do all the chores. Gosh, really? Said Maurice, wondering if there were any more fish heads. And if there were any more fish heads, whether they were worth all this. Well, most of the chores, said Militia, as if revealing an unfortunate fact. Some of them, definitely. I have to clean up my own room, you know, and it's extremely untidy. Gosh, really? And it's very nearly the smallest bedroom. There are practically no cupboards, and I'm running out of bookshelf space. Gosh, really? And the people, they're incredibly cruel to me. You will note that we're here in the kitchen. And I'm the mayor's daughter. Should the daughter of a mayor be expected to wash up at least once a week? I think not. Gosh, really? And will you just look at these torn and bedraggled clothes I have to wear? Maurice looked. He wasn't good on clothes. Fur was enough for him, and as far as he could tell, Militia's dress was pretty much like any other dress. It seemed to be all there. There weren't any holes, except where the arms and head poked through. Here, just here, said Militia, pointing to a place on the hem which, to Maurice, looked no different from the rest of the dress. I had to sew that back myself, you know. Gosh, Maurice stopped. From here he could see bare shelves. More importantly, he could see sardines abseiling down from a crack in the ancient ceiling. He had a knapsack on his back. And on top of this, I'm the one who has to queue for the bread and sausages every day, Militia continued. But Maurice was listening even less than he had been before. It had to be sardines, he thought. Idiot. He always goes ahead of the trap squad. Of all the kitchens in all the town he could turn up in, he's turned up in this one. Any minute she's going to turn around and scream. Sardines would probably treat it as applause too. He lived life as if it were a performance. Other rats just ran around squeaking and messing up things, and that was quite good enough to convince humans there was a plague, but oh no, Sardines always had to go further. Sardines and his meow song and dance act. And the rats take everything, Militia was saying. What they don't take, they spoil. It's been terrible. The council have been buying in food from other towns, but no one has very much to spare. We have to buy corn and stuff from the traders that sail up the river. That's why bread is so expensive. Expensive, eh? Said Maurice. "We've tried traps and dogs and cats and poison, and still the rats keep coming," said the girl. "They've learned to be really sneaky too. They hardly ever end up in our traps anymore. Ha! I only ever got 50p for one tail. What's the good of the rat catchers offering us 50p a tail if the rats are so cunning? The rat catchers have to use all kinds of tricks to get them, they say." Behind her, Sardines looked carefully around the room and then signalled to the rats in the ceiling to pull the rope up. "Don't you think this would be a good time to go away?" said Maurice. "Why are you making faces like that?" said Militia, staring at him. "Oh, well, you know, that kind of cat that grins all the time? Heard of that? Well, I'm the kind that makes, weird faces," said Maurice desperately. "And sometimes I just burst out and say things, 'Get away! Get away!' See, I did it again. It really is an affliction. I probably need counselling." "Oh, no, don't do that. No, this is not the time to do that. Oh, whoops. Oh, there I go again." Sardines had pulled his straw hat out of his knapsack. He was holding a small walking stick. It was a good routine, even Maurice had to admit. Some towns had advertised for a rat piper the very first time he'd done it. People could tolerate rats in the cream, and rats in the roof, and rats in the teapot, but they drew the line at tap dancing. If you saw tap dancing rats, you were in big trouble. Maurice had reckoned that if only the rats could play an accordion as well, they could do 2 towns a day. He'd stared for too long. Militia turned and her mouth opened in shock and horror as Sardines went into his routine. The cat saw her hand reach out for a pan that was on the table. She threw it very accurately. But Sardines was a good pot dodger. The rats were used to having things thrown at them. He was already running when the pan was halfway across the room, and then he leapt into the chair, and then he jumped onto the floor, and then he dodged behind the dresser, and then there was a sharp, final, metallic snap. "Ha!" said Militia, and Maurice and Keith stared at the dresser. "That's one rat less at any rate. Oh, I really hate them." "It was Sardines," said Keith. "No, it was definitely a rat," said Militia. "Sardines hardly ever invade a kitchen. I expect you're thinking about the plague of lobsters over in—" "He just called himself Sardines because he saw the name on a rusty old tin and thought it sounded stylish," said Maurice. He wondered if he dared look behind the dresser. "He was a good rat," said Keith. "He used to steal books for me when they were teaching me to read." "Excuse me, are you mad?" said Militia. "It was a rat. The only good rat is a dead rat." "Hello?" said a little voice. It came from behind the dresser. "It can't be alive. It's a huge trap," said Militia. "It's got teeth." Anyone there? Only the stick is bending," said the voice. The dresser was massive, the wood so old that time had turned it black, and it had become as solid and heavy as stone. "That's not a rat talking, is it?" said Militia. "Please tell me the rats can't talk." In fact, it's bending quite a bit now," said the voice, which was slightly muffled. Maurice squinted into the space behind the dresser. "Oh, I can see him," he said. He wedged the stick in the jaws as they closed. "Watch your Sardines, how are you doing?" "Fine, boss," said Sardines in the gloom. "If it wasn't for this trap, I'd say everything was perfect. Did I mention the stick is bending?" "Yes, you said. It's bent some more since then, boss." Keith grabbed one end of the dresser and grunted as he tried to move it. "It's like a rock," he said. "It's full of crockery," said Militia, now quite bewildered. "But rats don't really talk, do they?" "Get out the way," shouted Keith. He grabbed the back edge of the dresser with both hands and braced one foot against the wall and heaved. Slowly, like a mighty forest tree, the dresser pitched forward. The crockery started to fall out as it tipped, plate slipping off plate like one glorious, chaotic deal from a very expensive pack of cards. Even so, some of them survived the fall onto the floor, and so did some of the cups and saucers, as the cupboard opened and added to the fun, but that didn't make any difference, because then the huge, heavy woodwork thundered down on top of them. One miraculously whole plate rolled past Keith, spinning round and getting lower on the floor with the groyoing sound you always get in these distressing circumstances. Keith reached down to the trap and grabbed Sardines. As he pulled the rat up, the stick gave way and the trap snapped shut. A bit of the stick spun away through the air. "Are you all right?" Keith asked. "Well, boss, all I can say is that it's a good job rats don't wear underwear." "Thanks, boss," said Sardines. He was quite plump for a rat, but when his feet were dancing, he could float across the floor like a balloon. There was the sound of a tapping foot. Militia, with arms folded and an expression like a thunderstorm, looked at Sardines, and then at Maurice, and then at the stupid-looking Keith, and then at the wreckage on the floor. Sorry about the mess, said Keith, but he was... She waved this away. Okay, she said, as if she'd been thinking deeply. It goes like this, I think. The rat is a magical rat. I bet he's not the only one. Something happened to him or them, and now they're really quite intelligent despite the tap dancing, and they're friends with the cat. So why would rats and a cat be friends? And it goes, there's some kind of an arrangement, right? I know, don't tell me. Huh? Said Keith. I shouldn't think anyone has to tell you anything, said Maurice. Something to do with plagues of rats, right? All these towns we've heard about, well, you heard about them too, and so you've got together with Thingy here. Keith, said Keith. Yes, and so you go from town to town pretending to be a plague of rats, and Thingy, Keith, yes, pretends to be a rat piper, and you all follow him out, right? It's all a big swindle, yes? Sardines looked up at Maurice. She's got us banged to rights, boss, he said. So, now you've got to give me one good reason why I don't call the watch on you, said Militia triumphantly. I don't have to, Maurice thought, because you won't. Gosh, humans are so easy. He rubbed up against Militia's legs and gave her a smirk. If you do, you'll never find out how the story ends, he said. Ah, it'll end up with you going to prison, said Militia. But Maurice saw her staring at the stupid-looking kid and at Sardines. Sardines still had his little straw hat on. When it comes to attracting attention, that sort of thing counts for a lot. When he saw her frowning at him, Sardines hastily removed his straw hat and held it in front of him by the brim. There's something I'd like to find out, boss, he said. If we're finding out things. Militia raised an eyebrow. Well, she said, and don't call me boss. I'd like to find out why there's no rats in this city, Gov, said Sardines. He tap-danced a few steps nervously. Militia could glare better than a cat. What do you mean no rats? She said. There's a plague of rats, and you're a rat anyway. Well, there's rat runs all over the place, and there's a few dead rats, but we haven't found a living rat anywhere, Gov. Militia leaned down. But you're a rat, she said. Yes, Gov, but we only arrived this morning. Sardines grinned nervously as Militia gave him a long stare. Would you like some cheese? She said. I'm afraid it's only mousetrap. I don't think so, thank you very much all the same, said Sardines very carefully and politely. It's no use. I think it really is time to tell the truth. No, said Maurice, who hated that kind of thing. It's all because... You were right, miss, said Keith wearily. We go from town to town with a bunch of rats and fool people into giving us money to leave. That's what we do. I'm sorry we've been doing it. This was going to be the last time. I'm very sorry. You shared your food with us and you haven't got much either. We ought to be ashamed. It seemed to Maurice, while he was watching Militia make up her mind, that her mind worked in a different way to other people's minds. She understood all the hard things without even thinking. Magical rats, yeah. Talking cats, been there, done that, bought the singlet. It was the simple things that were hard. Her lips were moving. She was, Maurice realised, making up a story out of it. So, she said, you come along with your trained rats. We prefer educated rodents, Gov, said Sardines. All right, you're educated rodents, and you move into a city, and what happens to the rats that are there already? Sardines looked helplessly at Maurice. Maurice nodded to him to keep on. They were all going to be in big trouble if Militia didn't make up a story she liked. They keep out of our way, boss. I mean, Gov, said Sardines. Can they talk too? No, Gov. I think the clan thinks of them a bit like monkeys, said Keith. I was talking to Sardines, said Militia. Sorry, said Keith. And there are no other rats here at all, Militia went on. No, Gov. A few old skeletons and some piles of poisons and lots of traps, boss, but no rats, boss. But the rat catchers nail up a load of rat tails every day. I speak as I find, boss, Gov. No rats, boss, Gov. No other rats anywhere we've been, boss, Gov. Have you ever looked at the rat tails, miss? Said Maurice. What do you mean? Said Militia. They're fake, said Maurice. Some of them anyway, they're just old leather bootlaces. I saw some in the street. They weren't real tails, said Keith. I'm a cat. You think I don't know what rats' tails look like? Surely people would notice, said Militia. Yeah, said Maurice. Do you know what an aglet is? Aglet? Aglet? What's an aglet got to do with anything? Snapped Militia. It's those little metal bits on the end of shoelaces, said Maurice. How come a cat knows a word like that? Everyone's got to know something, said Maurice. Have you ever looked closely at the rat tails? Of course not. You can get the plague from rats, said Militia. Yeah, that's right. Your legs explode, said Maurice, grinning. That's why you didn't see the aglets. Your legs exploded lately, Sardines? Not today, boss, said Sardines. Mind you, it's not even lunchtime yet. Militia looked pleased. Aha, she said, and it seemed to Maurice that the ha had a very nasty edge to it. So, you're not going to tell the watch about us? He ventured hopefully. What, that I've been talking to a rat and a cat? Said Militia. Of course not. They'll tell my father I've been telling stories and I'll get locked out of my room again. You get locked out of your room as a punishment, said Maurice. Yes, it means I can't read my books. I'm a rather special person, as you may have guessed, said Militia proudly. Haven't you ever heard of the Sisters Grimm? Agonizer and Eviscera Grimm? They were my grandmother and my great-aunt. They wrote fairy tales. Ah, so we're temporarily out of trouble here, thought Maurice. Best to keep her talking. I'm not a big reader as cats go, he said. So, what were these, then? Stories about little people with wings going tinkle-tinkle? No, said Militia. They were not big on tinkling little people. They wrote real fairy tales, ones with lots of blood and bones and bats and rats in. I've inherited the storytelling talent, she added. Oh, I kind of thought you had, said Maurice. And if there's no rats under the town, but the rat catchers are nailing up bootlaces, I smell a rat, said Militia. Sorry, said Sardines. I think that was me. I'm a bit nervous. There were sounds from upstairs. Quick, go out across the backyard, Militia commanded. Get up into the hayloft over the stables. I'll bring you some food. I know exactly how this sort of thing goes.